Hey everyone, apologies on some of the audio issues in this episode. For whatever reason, some of the timing got off on the Wi-Fi and did our best to edit them out and correct some of them. So you'll see, for example, Aaron talking when you're not actually hearing him talking. And then in the audio version, you'll hear him talking over the other person just because the timing doesn't line up. It was really weird. Did our best to take some of them out, but I couldn't get all of them out. So apologies on that. And hopefully this isn't a normal thing with some of the new software that we're using. So anyway, enjoy the episode. Light up. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're in the team room. And once again, we keep hitting you with awesome guests. Today, we have Master Sergeant Chris Garcia, and he's one of the cadre. He's been there for about 1.5 years now, but he's one of the cadre for the TACP FTU Phase 1. So welcome to the show, Chris. Happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll dive right into the FTU, because I'm going to tell you right now, we get continuous questions about the TACP pipeline. So to have you on is really a treat because you're going to be able to answer a whole lot of questions for us.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll give you kind of some backstory for me. So I didn't join the military until I was about 22 years old. I finished basic in probably December of 2020 or 2010. So I've been in just shy of 12 years. I went to Fort Bragg for my first duty assignment. I was actually there for 9.5 years. I was at least at 2 different units. Got one deployment out there to Iraq, and then JTAC instructor, JTAC evaluator. Been exposed to the Air Support Operations Center as TAC C2, and then I came really to Camp Bullis, and I am now the operations superintendent of Phase 1 of the TACP formal training unit. And we actually just rebranded. So the new rebrand is called the Initial Certification Course, or ICC. The overarching construct of what we do, our pipeline, is called the FTU, but one of the sub courses is ICC now. So,
okay, so I want to start. I'll kick this off and go from the very beginning. And this is no kidding. We were kind of talking before we started here because this really is education for all of us. I graduate basic training. What happens?
Post basic training.
Well, first of all, you're the honor graduate, Peaches. That's what happens. First of all, is you go. So you graduate basic training and you go over to the mini mall over there on JBSA and you wear your honor graduate ribbon, and then you have to bring a stick with you to beat off people that want to be close to you, because that's basically what it happens. Okay, so anyway, so Peaches goes to Smoothie King on the Riverwalk.
So TACP,
he gets a smoothie in his blues,
go through,
and then what for the TACP pipeline?
And I know Combat Control, PJ, Special Recon, they all kind of branch off eventually. The Tactical Air Control Party community does not yet have a ANS or assessment selection. And so determine where they're going to be classified, which AFSC or Air Force specialty code that they are identified to do. TACP will branch off and go their route. And of course, you're familiar with the other special warfare equivalents going through ANS. So TACP will eventually go to the 3-level course, the apprentice course, which is at JBSA, so Joint Base San Antonio Chapman Annex. They'll conduct their 3-level or apprenticeship or apprentice training there. Post-graduation, they will conduct airborne school, SEER school, so your survival school, and they will PCS to us at Camp Bullis, which is still within Joint Base San Antonio.
Okay. And then, I'm going to keep walking the dog on this, and then kind of what happens once they arrive at Camp Bullis.
So once they arrive at Camp Bullis, so they will pretty much await team. So we only run classes of 24 students, unfortunately. Sometimes the 3-level course graduates more than that. But we try to get students on team as soon as possible. They will conduct 2 weeks of administrative stuff. So they'll knock out a lot of expectations briefs. Since these students are coming to us from 3-level, they're not exposed to the first term Airmen Center courses that are traditionally held at their first duty station. So we actually started adding like finance briefs, mortgage briefs, nutrition briefs, briefs about sleep, fatigue and stress management. We have Chief Mater from AFPC.
Yeah.
He comes down and talks about assignments. So we've been kind of bolstering the front end of the course for some more professional and personal development for these individuals before they start team. And while they go through course, they'll be here for 16 weeks in training. And then they will depart to phase 2 post that. Phase 2 will be at Nellis Air Force Base, which will be for another 5 weeks. And we can kind of go more detail of like how each phase is broken down and then what's conducted within each phase as well. So, but they PCS to us, they TDY to Nellis. And then once they graduate Nellis, they come back to us. And then we do all the hard work of, getting them to their first duty assignments.
Got you. Yeah. And that's a question that we get a lot, right? People want to know not only, hey, what is the course about, but they see that, okay, well, TACP aren't going to SWIC or TACP, we don't have an assessment selection. They just assume that they just show up and they go into training. And you just laid out, you're doing a bunch of like NCO stuff for these young candidates. Like you're taking them to finance, you're teaching them how they're going to live in that phase 1 environment. Like that's a very important thing that people overlook oftentimes. If we don't say it explicitly, people assume that it doesn't happen. But a big part of your job, I imagine, is getting people ready to get into that phase 1. What are some of the big mistakes that you're seeing kind of in that student awaiting training status? Because we don't talk about it a lot, but you spend a good amount of your time in that, waiting for team to start. You just talked about how we don't have classes larger than 24 individuals per class. What are some mistakes that you see in those 3-level airmen, in those really tech school airmen that are getting ready to start the course?
So we've been fairly lucky, to be honest. We set our expectations pretty high and pretty early on for these individuals, and we let them know, hey, this is what we expect of you. We really harp on kind of the basics, so custom courtesies, respecting everyone there, despite if they're not cadre, if they're contractors, respect them. If they're support AFSC, support them as well or respect them. So we kind of like instill it in them really early on, say, hey, we don't have time for any shenanigans. We don't have any time for any administrative action. So really we kind of say, hey, you need to keep your noses clean, because our commander at the detachment and also our commander at the 6 CTS in Nellis gave us full authority to pull guys from the course and just get them out of TACP. If they're not going to have the right attributes and the right attitude to understand why they want to be there, to hopefully be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, we hate getting them. We get the DMs and the guys are like, well, I've dedicated my entire life to this. I've really done everything I possibly can. And I had one weekend where I accidentally, drank and stayed out until 4:30 in the morning and punched a police horse in the mouth. And I really want to be part of this program. And listen, guys and gals, discipline issues will get you kicked out just as fast as not meeting standards. So if you're that serious about it, this is the time to keep your nose clean and actually show up to training and do what you're supposed to, right? So enough of the soapbox for me. So Chris, we move past that initial phase. Everybody is locked in. They're ready to go. When do they get their class date? Like, when do they know that they're going in a team? Is there a big lag there? Is it a couple months?
So traditionally, I build the rosters. I work with what we call the registrar, who manages the course at Nellis. And so I try to get the roster solidified 30 days out from execution. So 30 days out before the actual day of training 1 is when we lock in the team rosters. That flexes a little bit based off our inbound rate. So depending on when the 353rd, the 3-level course provides us the students, will dictate how soon we can get the team filled up for 24 students. This last class, so our next class is about to begin in about 2 weeks. They were solidified probably 3 weeks ago officially. So we get, of course, your pipeline, non-prior service airmen. We get officers who come through both pipeline and also prior service. We get, of course, your cross trainees, and we get your guard students. Guard students will have a little bit different timeline, so they have some additional courses they attend. So usually they show up a little bit later, especially if they do go back to their home duty, like their duty station, and then come back to the FTU.
Fantastic. So it's a lot of waiting, and then all of a sudden, like suddenly, bam, you got your course date and you're ready to go. The last thing I wanted to hit before we actually get into the, no kidding, what is that phase 1 is, what does the COMRO look like? So you just had a bunch of different people. So you got officers, you got non-prior service, you got guard, you have no kidding first term airmen that are, fresh off the bus down there at Lackland. So they have to get together and form as a team and then be ready to execute day one, right? So how do you set that up for them? Are the students expected to do that? And then what are some good things and bad things that you've seen the teams do? Because you can tell day one, if they don't know who's who in the zoo, they don't know who to go to for, who's dad, who's mom, who am I supposed to be asking for this, right? Like, what have you seen from the teams that they're like, man, I wish they would just figure it out?
So most of the teams, they have been together for a while. So most of the guys that are on teams have been together since the 3-level course, the apprentice course on Chapman. And so the team cohesion's already kind of built already. Of course, not their whole team is going to be together. They might have onesie twosies from other teams. But the way our structure works, we kind of put a lot of responsibility on the NCOs and the officers. So we are not really here to hold their hand the whole way. They already graduated 3-level. So we really put a lot of pressure on the NCOs and officers to be leaders and fulfill that role as best they can, especially since the cadre are so few. We can't be there day in, day out, especially on the off duty. So we really stress NCOs and officers doing what they're supposed to be doing, leading these guys. They'll be broken up into fire teams typically. So they'll have at least 4 fire teams within their flight. And then really communication and dissemination of information is key. So guys who communicate well are very successful. Guys who are proactive and free thinking do really well. Guys with good attitude, really comes down to good attitude. Guys with good attitude, wanting to learn, wanting to learn about being a leader or how to lead is what really makes them successful. And then our cadre are there to walk them along the way as well. So we kind of do like a crawl, walk, run at phase 1. And we try to do our professional development kind of sprinkled within the course as well to help, guide these NCOs and officers to hopefully be better leaders when they get out of here.
Right. And all that stuff is important. But I want to ask about the transition from 3 to 5 level. And I know we see this a lot is I'm assuming all the students remember 100% of the stuff that they were taught in 3 level and makes it super easy on y'all to just roll right into 5 level training. That's how it goes, right, Chris?
Unfortunately, no. Our pipelines aren't perfect. So there are some skills that atrophy from 3 level to 5 level. And so we do spend some time. I can break down the blocks, how we run our course, but we do allow some refresher and some retraining for those basic skills to make sure they have those solidified before they start pushing on to the next block of training. But that's no fault to the 3-level course. Unfortunately, some kids are waiting for schools. They don't have the resources and manning to implement additional training or academics. I think they're working on that now. I don't want to speak for them. But COVID hit. We had a lot of students who are waiting for schools due to COVID. And so many skills atrophied for our earlier classes when we ran this course. But we have seen improvement. The length of time that students are waiting to come here has definitely decreased. And we've noticed that the students are able to retain more of that knowledge when they come here.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of questions from folks like about what I can do during downtime and all this other stuff. Like, is there a way for them to take responsibility for some of those things that they were taught in the 3-level pipeline as they go through airborne and SEER and they're waiting around? Have you seen any of that where the NCOs or officers take charge of these little groups of people and make sure they're still studying those key things?
Yeah, so the teams with officers and NCOs for sure. I know we've had a team with strictly airmen, and that unfortunately they're just airmen, so it's a little bit more hand-holding for them. Oh yeah, so our class was all airmen. They graduated, so they graduated phase 2. Not everyone did, but majority of them did. But they had some growing pains going through. They definitely had a lot of instruction and guidance from the NCOs, the instructor corps. But for the 3-level course, they are implementing some type of program to allow for these students to have access to curriculum and academics to study upon as they're waiting to come here. And then typically we grant them access as well to course curriculum. So I'll typically, when the students arrive here, I'll give them a joint publication for close air support. I'll give them their joint fires, TTP, the JFire, a Ranger handbook, and then we will enroll them into what we call Class E365. And so this website basically grants them access to all the curriculum, all the PowerPoint presentations that they will conduct here at phase 1. And it additionally has resources. It has additional publications they can review. So I try to give that to them in the front end so they can start looking into, what they may be exposed to, read up on some stuff, and then be prepared to answer or ask questions when they get into the classroom setting.
Nice. So that they get out of 3 level and all this other stuff. They get up there, they get it through all the NCO, real life, welcome to the Air Force type of stuff. What is the first thing that you guys hit them with at the FTU as far as like TACP core skill set? What do you jump right into?
So our course is broken down into 4 blocks. You want me to just go into kind of all the blocks here at the FTU, or at least phase 1?
Sure.
So once they finish, so we have, like I mentioned before, we have the 2 weeks of administrative training, expectations briefs. Post that, they will start block 1 of training, which is 4 weeks long. The first week of block 1 is kind of a refresher of all their basic TACP skills. So working with radios, antennas, constructing antennas, doing your map and compass skills, land navigation, and then they'll do a little bit of CQC SMUT stuff, but it's really kind of seeing where they stand, how much they've atrophied from the 3-level course, and determines like how much more, work the cadre need to put into them to get them to progress further on. So first week is very basic refresher. The next 2 weeks are very heavy in academics. So the legacy JTAC qualification course that was at Nellis Air Force Base used to have academic courses and classes. We've since taken that on. And so pretty much they'll go through like 2 weeks of like heavy academics, PowerPoints, and they'll actually do their first 2 simulator events or their simulation events. They're instructor led. So the instructors will kind of walk the dog on the process for them to be successful. The first one is your close air support cadence. It's really just very basic, getting one aircraft, walking through the 12 steps, making sure they're doing everything safe, everything procedural correct. And that's really about it. Just very slow, just making sure they're doing the processes appropriately. And then the second simulator is a call for fire with rotor ring integration. So still very basic. It's all static, nothing too cosmic. We're just trying to get these guys exposed to basically these skill sets before we start making it more advanced as the blocks progress. So those are in the second and third week, or second and third, and the fourth week is top off of academics that were from the legacy JTAC QC course. They'll do some more small unit tactics and close quarter combat stuff, and then they'll get first exposed into night operations. We'll do some night driving under nods, which they should have accomplished already at 3-level, but it's kind of another check of like how well they operate in that condition before they move on to the next block. And then block 2.
I was gonna that night driving. Trent, I don't mean to be mean. So it's not you guys anymore, but I seem to remember a small square shaped Sauti guy almost killing us by driving into like a 15-foot arroyo under NVGs. So that thing there is to say you need all the time you possibly can driving and being under NVGs because there's no substitute for it. Like it sucks. Well, almost dead, Trent. So I know. Much to the lament of the career field.
I don't know if you're qualified to say almost.
Much to the lament of everybody that listened to this podcast, I'm still very much alive. All right. So anyway, the night driving is a requirement that we focus on.
Well, luckily, night vision goggles have greatly progressed throughout the years, so it's a lot easier to look under those things than like the 7 Deltas or even the ones before those. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. The old white phosphorus, they're game changer. So I do want to take a step back because I don't want to get too far ahead. Just because you had brought up something, with cross trainees, and then you had a class that had only airmen in it. Like, what is the kind of expectation that you guys have for either prior service or cross trainees that are coming in terms of that leadership role? Like, because it's kind of a nebulous thing when we say, oh, well, you're expected to lead these kind of folks, and it's a pipeline school. So we say that it's like, oh yeah, well, we just have these certain expectations, but like from a cadre's perspective, what do you expect from prior service and cross trainees?
So expectations from prior service are definitely higher, but due to their experience, especially if they're already a staff sergeant or a tech sergeant, it's being the NCO that's looking after the airmen, so they're looking after the health and well-being of the airmen. Make sure they're getting enough sleep and rest, food, their pay is taken care of. So keeping track of these airmen's pay, because that's a big thing as well, especially working with JBSA and having a lot of issues with ensuring guys are getting paid appropriately. But kind of the basic NCO skills, make sure the mental state's good, their family life is healthy, and they have overall good balance of their their work and personal life while they're going through the course. So being like they're there day to day. So unfortunately, we can't be there with the students at all times, but we utilize them kind of as our extension to make sure the airmen are in a right mindset as they go through the course, and they're staying healthy too.
No, and that's good too, because I mean, obviously it's good, but it's good because, you guys are kind of front loading, you said it, the finance classes and that kind of stuff, like all those, life skill kind of things that matter a lot, that are often overlooked when it comes to military training. So like, that's amazing that you guys are doing that. And then for those folks that are like that whole make sure your people are getting paid well, make sure that their family is taken care of, all those things that you think, well, that's an assumption. It's not always at the forefront of people's minds. So the fact that you guys are instilling that continuously and that becomes the norm is really good. So good on you. I'm going to ask this because it's going to roll me right into something else I want to talk about, but ruck marching. How much ruck marching should we do?
Well, so our students do a lot. We actually just did a ruck program, and so it's a phase program here at the FTU at phase 1. What I didn't mention in the admin weeks, so the Airmen actually conducts a OFT, so the operator fitness test, the tier 2 one, during those admin weeks, and they also conduct a 12-mile baseline ruck. So the 12-mile baseline ruck is just to see where they stand, to see how their skills or their conditioning atrophied from the 3-level course. And then utilizing those metrics and that data, we keep track of like how they progress through the ruck program. So they'll, do a 4, 6, 8, 10-miler, and then eventually do a 14-mile ruck for their final ruck march that's done here at phase 1. And it's actually a go, no go. So students have to pass this 14-mile ruck within the prescribed time standards.
Which are they? Are they allowed to know the time standards? Because if they're not, we won't mention it here. I just don't want to have any breaches in security here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the last thing that we need is like now we're giving out trade secrets as well. We
tell the students here, they will find out when they first arrive. But the students when they arrive here will be notified of the time standard.
I dig it, man. That is going to drive some people nuts.
So many. Now. Why can't we just know? Why can't you just tell us now? If you're going to tell us when we get there, why can't you just tell us now? That's my voice for what I assume everybody in the comments is like.
Just pop the lid on TACP.
That's it. Yeah, guys. It's bad enough we already have a special reconnaissance guy that doesn't tell us anything about anything that SR does. Now we got a TACP guy too. One of the things that people kind of forget, and you've mentioned it a couple times here, and I want to highlight it because it's important. You keep saying like, hey, how many, have these skills atrophied, whatever. Hey, boys and girls, welcome to having way too many currency and proficiency items to keep up on them all the time. Just over the course of, we've been talking for what, like 20, 25 minutes. We've talked about how you're going to get PowerPoints, how you're going to get mentorship on real life advice, how you're going to be expected to sleep, eat, train, and recover 100% of your time. We're asking you to please be brushed up on academics, things that you've learned before. We're expecting you to not only internalize those things and meet the standard once, but then hold that standard the entire time. I know we made a joke about it earlier, but once you gain a skill, you don't have the luxury in these pipelines to just learn a skill, brain dump it, and then be like, okay, cool, on to the next course. That's not how this goes. And even, we're talking specifically about rucking. But really, if you get a little bit used to admin, you get a little bit used to being at that computer, studying for 2 weeks, a little bit used to being in that classroom environment, and then you throw on a ruck and you go for a walk, your feet may not be conditioned in the same way that they were before. Those lower legs, they just feel a little bit different. So you have to be out there. You have to be on those feet and working, because if not, those skills are going to atrophy. And sometimes you got to break a mental sweat too. Sometimes you got to review those courses of instruction before class as well. Chris, how important is that preparedness? Like, especially, we'll talk about rucking, so we'll stay there, but How important is that preparedness to make sure that those skills stay where they are?
So for us as TACP, and even other AFSCs, like we can be integrated to many different types of units. And the TACP, I won't go too deep into the weeds of this, but the TACP community is kind of shifting their focus, and they're kind of changing a little bit how they do business. And one of those areas of business that they're moving towards is conducting operations in small teams, and then doing more reconnaissance type stuff and going deep out, like beyond the FLOT, so the forward line of troops, which requires them to ruck, carry a pack on their back with 60 to 90 pounds of all their equipment, and then them to survive out there for a period of time, collecting information, not necessarily doing the Gucci cleared hot stuff all the time, but being a force multiplier in a different regard. But being able to ruck march and carry your pack, and to be able to dismount and stay up with a team, so you're not a liability, is super important. Even the conventional, like working with the light infantry or airborne units, they're going to be walking quite far, many places. So being able to be conditioned to stay up with your Army counterparts and whatever teams you augment is super important, because you provide a certain capability as a tactical air control party member, and if you can't keep up with that team, like, you're just doing them no good at that point. So a lot of students don't really understand. Like we've had some students who complained about how much we ruck here, but ultimately we're trying to maintain conditioning so their bodies are adapted to that stress. And so when they leave the FTU and they get to their operational unit, like if they deploy, then their body's already conditioned to carry that workload or that load on their back, and actually do the work that's required of them.
I can't imagine a sister service team giving the Air Force guy a hard time if you can't keep up. That just doesn't.
I can't. Yeah,
they seem so nice.
Right, guys. It's a joint environment. I don't understand why. The real question I have, Trent, is like, so we understand that guys are going to be alone and unafraid out there in the wilderness on their own, living out of their pack. But how? There's no company that supports those sort of outdoor endeavors. Do you know of anybody, maybe friends of ours, that would actually help people get ready for this sort of thing?
I mean, yeah, Eberly stock, I guess. I don't know. Anyway,
what?
Yeah, that's what we all use. I think we made it through phase 1, and Aaron, I appreciate that the setup for Eberly stock, that was amazing. So
little softball for you. I'm getting the bando bag ASAP for my everyday carry. Mike McBride posted a picture of his bando bag and his everyday carry, and I was like, not only do I want all of those things, send me your gun. But give me that bando bag. It's fantastic. Holds all your stuff. EberlyStock.com.
We're going to have to send Chris some Eberly stock stuff.
We're going to have
to. For putting up with us. So they make it through phase 1, which is basically like a rehash and an intro, right? Of 3-level and intro to some JTACery. What's phase 2 like?
Yeah, so that's block 1 of our training. So we have 4 blocks of training. Block 1 is kind of the rehash of skills and academics of the Legacy JTAC qualification course. As guys get through block 2, 3, and 4, it's more of a, they start jogging and running through the training. So for block 2, they get exposed to all their TACP equipment, all their specialized equipment. So whether it be laser range finding devices, their laser target designator devices, they'll work with the new Android type phones that have ATAC or SWAC on them. So the basically a phone that has like a moving map for the most part. So basically any other TACP equipment, they really get exposed to that in block 2 and be able to utilize it and apply it in a few scenarios. They'll do more night operations training under nods. So they'll get exposed to operating and using their kit, and hopefully how to configure that kit or their TACP equipment appropriately under night operations. And then they'll do 2 additional simulator events. So they'll do 2 more instructor-led sim events within block 2. And then they'll finalize block 2 with their first FTX, the field training event, when they start applying all these skills that they're learned.
Can I ask about
Good.
The kit, because I think that's something that's overlooked from people that haven't joined yet. Like the knowing where all your stuff is, the being, having everybody's IFAC in the same place. How important is that, and how often do you guys jack that up, and it ends up, making their life harder than it has to be while they're out in the field?
So at 3-level, students are taught how to tie their equipment down, and we've had a few classes who thought they were done and over with that kind of that stuff. But a few classes learned the hard way where they did lose some equipment because it wasn't tied off. And so they had to do hands across America for many, many hours to find this lost equipment. But so we kind of
can we? I was going to use the same term. Can we explain hands across America? It's intuitive to us, and all of us, my little black heart, just got so like a degree warmer when I heard it. So let's say that you got a team of operators. They're so high speed, Chris. They don't need to tie anything down. They don't need to do sensitive items check in or out of an objective area like we do inside of our normal routines and inside our normal priorities of work. Because, they're ready to slang and bang. You know what I mean? Barrel-chested, freedom fighters, clutching a black rifle. They got some green or white phosphorus eyes. They got a sweet helmet on. They're out here to work. They're operators, bro. If they lose some kit, it's cool, right? No, it's not cool, bro. So what's hands across America?
So to kind of just summarize it, it's basically where, depending on where you were training or operating at, everyone kind of just spreads out, and they basically walk the whole length of that training area very slowly, making sure they're kind of turning over every rock unturned to ensure they find this sensitive item. And it's going to last hours. Like, we had a class that had to come back on a weekend and do it again because they couldn't find it on the Friday.
Oh, so. I will tell the story very briefly about how there I was in Hunter Army Airfield, and we were doing a free fall jump with the 160th. We were using real world crypto on the radios that we were doing, and on the free fall jump, one of our guys lost his radio. Well, we spent a lot of time being super high speed special operations guys, holding hands and walking across a field. So it never gets old. You lose a piece of equipment, you're going to find it. I want to talk about the FTX though, because that's at the end of block 2. It sounds like we're starting to put things all together, and we would see it at the pararescue schoolhouse where a guy can be a good medic. He can be okay on the mic. He can be okay as a climber, but you start layering these things together and you're like, hey, here's a new ATAC. We just taught you how to learn. Here's some small unit tactics that we gave you advanced techniques for. Oh, by the way, your basic fundamentals of shoot, move, communicate have to be locked on, and I want you to do these things. Do you see the same sort of, you see the stress, you see the performance? The first FTX in block 2 are really the last, FTX in block 2. Is that just a dumpster fire sometimes? I imagine that it is.
It is. So like I said, we're still doing the crawl rock 1. So the first FTX, they're getting a lot of instruction and guidance on how to do operations. So it's not pretty sometimes. So depending on their experience level on their team. So the final FTX for block 2. So ultimately it is not pretty sometimes based off the experience levels on the team itself.
3, then. So
but they are kind of
hey,
you kind of guided along the way to execute. Be, so it's very basic. You go over your battle drills from your Ranger handbook. So whether it be an ambush or raid, their final mission is a raid, opening a raid of a compound, and then them securing an objective. And then one student or a few students will kind of switch off playing the JTAC role. But very basic. They'll only have a couple assets or aircraft on station in order to execute that mission. But they're guided kind of along the way as they go through execution until they get to the next blocks of training where it's more ramped up and kind of a little bit less hands-on, and then us kind of more observing how they're going to be executing and how they're performing.
Nice. Well, that flows perfectly into block 3 then. So you get out of block 2 and they're ready to kind of, hey, you guys have a little bit more. I assume it's going to be, the leashes are off a little bit more in mission planning, and, they're allowed to have those skills, right? So if we taught you those new skills, you should be able to use them on your own at some point. What's block 3 all about?
So block 3, a big focus of block 3 is reconnaissance operations. So patrol operations and reconnaissance, moving from objective to objective and being mobile. And so this is the first block where they have graded scenarios or graded missions.
So a lot of these, now we're adding live fire, you know what I mean? And granted, it's a UTM, but now you're no kidding pulling a trigger and you could possibly shoot one of your teammates. That's a big no-no. Typically on the good bad scale, shooting a teammate is a bad thing. But now we're looking at even more skills in phase 3. What are the big mistakes that you see as people start getting these new phases and these new skills? Where can you tell the difference? Like, what's the watershed for you between, hey, this is a good student and they're on track and they're going to graduate this specific course or this specific phase, and what's bad? Like, when you see a student that's not doing the right thing here, what does that look like?
So the biggest one is, I would say, response to instruction. So we expect individuals or students that come through here to fail. Like, we're here to train them. We want them to learn from their mistakes and what they do wrong. But it's when students who can't grasp the feedback that is given to them and the additional instruction that's given to them, and kind of grasp it, understand it, and then apply it for their next attempt to conduct that business. So I would say that's square one, is just understanding what's they're being debriefed on, and then how to apply it again in a different, potentially a different method or a different way, or a different manner to be successful. So that's one. And then really it comes down to motivation and drive and attitude. So students who are dedicated and want to be there, they want to become a TACP. They spend the extra time outside of the duty day to study. They get together with small study groups. They'll train on the weekends. They'll try to apply these skills that they're taught and get more repetitions in. And so when they are expected to be evaluated on that subject, they're successful. And so the teams that are successful are the teams that do spend extra time outside the duty day to get together and refresh on these skills, or get some more reps before they have to do the actual thing.
Chris, I like to go sequentially, and that's what we do in the military. We've already covered phase 1, 2, and 3. How about phase 4? Like, how does that roll in there? And you guys are tying all this stuff together.
So block 4 of our training is a lot more field skills. They spend a lot of time out in the field. So that's when we start exposing them to more medical training. So they'll have some medical training sprinkled throughout the course, but they'll get a lot more medical training here. The intent is to eventually get students TCCC certified or CLS plus or equivalent when they leave here. They'll do some demolitions training, some breaching training. They'll work with claymores, hand grenades. We'll expose them to the basically some machine guns, so the 240, 249. So basically the rifle, the machine guns in 5.56 and 7.62. We eventually plan on getting students exposed to the 50 cal as well as the Mark 19 grenade launcher. Fortunately, Cant Bullis can't facilitate that yet, but we are in the works of adding that to the course. They'll do. Why don't you know if there was a fire on Cant Bullis a little bit ago?
Not with that attitude, you can't. Listen, I'm sure Cant Bullis will be just fine ripping off just a slick 20 or
no issues.
20 or 30 rounds out of a Mark 19, out of a truck-mounted Mark 19 with HE.
Dude,
no big deal.
Listen, already loud enough
Northern San Antonio, that's just going to roll right off their back. That's going to be fine.
What else? We expose them to seaburn operations, so they get uncomfortable wearing mop gear and having to do the job under mop 4. And so they'll do a few movements in that, so that's not fun.
You just sprint.
They'll do some training in contested graded operations. Really, we're kind of just topping off all these skills, so when they get to their final FTX in Block 4, they're basically bringing it all together, and they're executing on their own with no guidance, like really no direction whatsoever, or no hand-holding whatsoever. They're just there, and we're observing and keeping notes of how they perform.
So you guys are jamming a lot of, like, just as an outsider, jamming a lot of stuff into Block 4. Like, so how many weeks are we looking at for Block 4? Because that, I mean, just the heavy weapons training the crew served alone, I mean, that takes some time. The TCCC, I mean, that TCCC doesn't take, for the certification, doesn't take a lot of time, but if you want to actually be somewhat decent at some medicine, that's going to take some time.
Like, get good at it.
The demolition, and then you're throwing in the FTX. So what are we looking at in terms of timeline for Block 4?
It's still 4 weeks. All blocks are 4 weeks long. So we're cramming all that in.
You're just sprinting. Dang. Yeah.
I can tell you
so
that. The course, go ahead.
Go. I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Go for it. We got a little lag.
I can tell you now that the course length may not stay the same. So if people that are listening are familiar with what a CFTP is, so the Career Field Education Training Plan for TACP, it's outdated right now. It's the current version is 2016. They're in process of creating or publishing a new version of our Career Field Education Training Plan that's going to be titled. It's going to be a special warfare one, but it's going to add a lot more line items or training tasks that have to be accomplished. So we're going to do the best we can initially within that 16-week time frame. But there is potential that the course may have to lengthen based on all these skills that will be required for these individuals.
So and what I wanted to bring up too is that 4 weeks is not a lot of time, and you're cramming a lot of stuff in there. That is one of the reasons why when we take the ASVAB, right? The ASVAB is an easy. I'll just say it's an easy test, but it's an aptitude test, and it's testing your problem solving skills and also your trainability. That's why we're looking for people that are trainable, not like, hey, I'm stuck in my ways and this is the way we did it. XYZ, if you're a cross trainee or prior service, something like that, like we need you to be trainable, because we are going to, and the whole blank slate thing, like, people want to know, hey, should I go learn how to shoot? Should I take land nav courses? Should I do this? This is why we want you to come in with a blank slate, because we don't have that much time to train you, and we don't want to have to break bad habits. So come in as a blank slate, be open, be trainable, and then get it on, because 4 weeks in each of those blocks of it's not a long time at all.
You're talking about 20 training days. That's what that works out to. Like, sometimes we train over the weekend, but man, there's a finite amount of hours in a day. So when you're talking about 20 training days, let's say that each one of those days is 10 hours long, right? You don't count your lunch and you work a good amount of, 10 to 12 hour days. We're still only talking about 250 hours total for you to understand and internalize and apply these highly conceptual skills in a high stress environment. Like the people that are, I understand when students or when people getting in are like, well, I want to lean forward as much as I can so that I have this stuff. That's fine, as long as you can walk that line of when an instructor comes up to you and goes, hey, you're doing it wrong. I need you to do it this way. If you can't break that other bad habit, that one's on you, homie. Like the easiest way to do it is come in with a blank slate, like Peaches is saying, completely moldable. You want to come in as a piece of clay. If you want to come in with some other prior skills, that's fine, but you better be able to abandon how you do those skills right away and be able to perform the way the instructors want you to. Yep. Got them.
Nailed
Mark
it.
It down, everybody.
I did have
write it down.
Yeah, write it down. I did have a question, because you guys are, well, actually, I'm saying this because I already know the answer to it, but I want folks to know that, like, when you say the Joint Terminal Attack Controller Simulator or the JTAC Simulator, like, what are we talking about, like little PlayStation video games? Are we talking about VR headsets? Like, can you just dive into that real quick and explain that?
Yeah, so we have at least 2 JTAC simulators. One is what we call a desktop trainer. It's basically just a big TV screen where you have a few devices that simulate actual equipment. So you have at least a tablet with your radio faced on there, so you can actually program your radios and switch your frequencies. You'll have a laser rangefinder type device that can provide multiple functions, and you also have a controller. It's like a PlayStation equivalent controller to move your avatar around, so you can actually look around and see the environment. So that's what we physically have at Phase 1. Phase 2 has those, but they also have what we call a dome simulator, which is like a 270-degree screen with similar functions. It still has all the replicated equipment in there as well, but it just allows the students to have a better view of their battlefield when they conduct those simulated missions.
Yeah, and I will throw in just real quick, since we're talking about simulators, there is some new stuff coming out for all those out there that that thinks that might be a little bit dated. There is a virtual reality JTAC simulator that is on the horizon. It's currently going through accreditation, or maybe by this time this airs, it will have already been accredited, and it is next level. It's fantastic. The graphics, the interface, it's phenomenal. And by the time these folks that are watching this come into the TACP pipeline, like, it should be there, hopefully.
Chris, so as I've been sitting here, I've been listening to you explain the FTU or ICC, and it all makes a lot of sense, which is confusing to me. Like, you guys do crawl, walk, run. You don't grade them for like the first 2 blocks, which gives them the opportunity to fail and to learn and do all these other things. You guys build these things on top of each other. And I'm just wondering, like, A, why there's not more chaos in your course, and B, though, based on your experience coming in through like about 12 years ago, is it moving in the right direction? Like, you guys are utilizing all these things we've talked about for a long time, the flipped classrooms and all these other things. And from your perspective, Airman Chris versus Mass Sergeant Chris, like, how much better is it now, and how much room for improvement is there?
We'll start off with just saying it's a lot better. So, and to basically put it in this way, where training now that these individuals, these TACP students receive, is standardized across the board. And so years ago, at least when I first came in, depending on which unit you were assigned to, your training may have started at different times. The quality of training may have been different as well. And so it really determines if your unit was deployed, who had the experience to train those individuals that were on in garrison or in the States. And so timelines were all different. They were kind of scattered across the board for some of the guys getting to their first duty stations. Now, when they get to our course, it's been streamlined, standardized. So everyone that comes to the course is going to get initially the same level of training, but of course we are developing new curriculum. We're trying to advance our course as well and make changes based off feedback. Both when the product that's coming to the CAF or the Combat Air Force is relatively the same. And so the baseline is kind of similar, or should be similar based off the individual itself. And so they can kind of build upon that product and make it better. But it allows the operational units to be less strained on resources, time and resources. It lets them able to focus on their proficiency training or focus on the operational mission. We can kind of take that workload off them and focus more on it. And then it allows us to hire the right people as well. So we can hire individuals who are experienced, who have deployment experience, different AFSCs, different MOSs, different backgrounds. We can build our instructor corps in a little bit different manner than your traditional ASOS, your Air Support Operations Squadron, where you have manning based off a unit manning document, and you can't, let's say, hire a certain contractor who has this specialty. We kind of have some freedom in that regard, where we can basically contract out different positions to ensure we're giving the students the best training that we can possibly give them as they come to this course.
No, just speaking of instructors, you guys, it seems like you're very, very focused on making sure that the students are successful and that you're training them and you're giving them all the, opportunities to learn these things and to be the best, TACP coming out the door that they possibly can be. Is it difficult to get all the instructors on the same sheet of music? Because like when you're like, hey, I'm going to go be an instructor, I think what a lot of people think is I'm going to go smash some cones. It's because it's fun. But is as the op soup, is it difficult to get everybody on the same sheet of music? And do you ever have to like pull them back and be like, hey guys, like this is the phase or the block where we're gonna let them fall on their face, but like block 4 we can get after them a little bit more?
Currently, no. So the individuals that we have currently at phase 1, they're all squared away, and they're amazing guys. Very proactive, very knowledgeable, very experienced. Everyone understands the mission, what we're trying to do here. Really just trying to create a better product for the TACP community moving forward, and a product that's well trained, hopefully, and is prepared, for the next fight as we move forward out of coin or out of GWAT. For instructor corps, we don't really have to dial it back at all. Like I said, we are here to train the students. All the cadre here are understanding and know that, hey, we will spend extra time with these individuals if necessary to make sure they're retaining the knowledge that we're giving them. But we're not here to smoke students. We're not here to beat them down in training. We're really here to just make sure they're in an environment where they're going to be grasping and absorbing all the knowledge that we give them. We will stress them out, so we will progressively induce stress as they go through the course. But it's a means to allow them to adapt to that stress and be able to increase their stress tolerance. And so when they get to the CAF or the Combat Air Force, they're not going to hopefully not be able to perform under those conditions, since they may have not been exposed to them. We can only expose them to so much in the training environment, but we try to induce stress as best we can, in of course a safe manner for these students going through.
I'm gonna ask this because we get asked all the time about our day to day. So, and it's Trent's favorite question. Yeah,
love it.
So it's Trent's favorite question, but from a student perspective, because usually that is like, hey, at an operational unit, what's your day to day like? But for the students coming in, like from wake up, like kind of how does their day flow? And that probably changes based on what block they're in, but just from a general perspective, what are they looking at?
I got
so general day to day.
The cooler your day of training,
have a strength and conditioning blocks. We actually have 2 strength and conditioning coaches assigned to our detachment.
Everybody's like,
so students will go through a PT session typically in the mornings. It'll be either strength based, condition based, whether it be on a track running or rucking.
You know how long it takes.
They'll conduct that usually before they do the training day.
Iteration.
Training days, depending on what they're doing, it may start at 8 o'clock or it may start at 9 or 9:30. Just really depends on like what has to be accomplished for that day. If they're doing a long day days of
weapons are
academics,
never
their days
clean.
may be longer.
You're going to
just
give
because
it
there's a
back
lot
cleaner
to
than
cram
you got
in.
it, and that's going to make you
Or if
mad.
they're going out
Just
to the
get up
range,
for it.
they
I
need
don't know what
to,
to
you know,
tell
pull
you.
weapons,
Cooler the training sounds, the longer your
basically
training day is
arm
going
up,
to be.
and
So
then at the end of
just
the day, of course, they need
there's your day to
to,
day,
you know, take
students.
those weapons back to the armag or the armory before the day's over. And then, yeah, really days can last until like 5:30 some days, 5:30, 6 o'clock for these students, especially if they're getting vehicles, you know, ready and prepared, depending on what missions they're doing or what training they're conducting. Getting all their TACP
These darn
equipment
millennials
loaded
always
up
on
and
their
packed
damn
up.
cell phones.
So yeah, I'll say average day for most classes, I would say 7 a.m. to like 4:35 p.m. is your traditional day. And of course that flexes a little bit based off what they're doing in that whatever block they're at the time.
Yeah, and I got bad news for everybody too. The cooler your day of training, the longer it's going to take you to set that training up and then clean up afterwards. So everybody looks at for us, everybody's like, "Oh, bro, jumping free fall into the water is so much fun because it's like you just land in the water and it's awesome." You know how long it takes to set up a free fall water jump? You know how long it takes to set up a heavy weapon iteration for a team of students? Man, you're pulling weapons early, you're setting the range up, there's a ton of safety checks you go through, and then at the end of the day, you're cleaning those weapons. Guess what? The weapons are never clean. You're going to give it back cleaner than you got it, and that's going to make you mad. Just get up for it. I don't know what to tell you, but the cooler the training sounds, the longer your training day is going to be. So just there's your day-to-day, students.
Chris, what kind of trends are you guys seeing from students, whether it's good or bad? You know, and don't worry, I'm going to ask you an advice question following this. Just some
anything the students are doing that doesn't make you hate them. I guess that's probably a better way to put it. Because listen, yeah,
let's see,
I was
trends.
just down at Kirtland, right? I'm not even an instructor. I gave a hug to some
I'll say the most recent one would be
we're doing anything wrong. It's just
sleep and nutrition. So our strength coaches implemented a kind of a log that these students conduct every morning before they start their PT sessions. So they track all their sleep, what they ate the night before. We try to track stress levels as well, or how they're feeling that day.
We always try to.
So some students are probably gaming too much at nighttime or on the weekends, not getting the adequate sleep they need to recover while they go through course. So that's the biggest one.
I don't have to tell a grown man when to get a
lack of sleep can cause a number of different issues.
What's in a book that I told them to read. Maybe I don't have to tell somebody that like all week is like,
we've had some attitude issues. So
operator. I'm going to be in charge of
most airmen that have come through here
you don't even know how to wear that outfit.
Some
you don't know how to wear your
let
clothes.
the basic
so can we find
Air Force stuff diminish. So your custom courtesies. Dress and appearance, that's one. So making sure people are abiding by, Air Force instructions and looking appropriately as they're in a formal course. So that's number two. Communication.
Good trends?
Not communicating appropriately. So students who don't communicate.
Any good trends? Anything the students are doing that doesn't make you hate them? I guess that's probably a better way to put it. Because listen, yeah, I was just down at Kirtland, right? I'm not even an instructor. I gave a hug to some of my friends, and it's not the students were doing anything wrong. It's just I hate them because they're students and they're not real people. So which is a thing. Like I shouldn't have said that. That's a pretty good audio clip. I'm sorry. So any good trends, Chris, that you're seeing? We feel the same trends, right? Like we say the same thing, and we always try to temper it with like, hey, of course the guys want you to be. I love hearing a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more formal. Maybe I don't have to tell a grown man when to get a haircut. Maybe I don't have to tell a grown man what's in a book that I told them to read. Maybe I don't have to tell somebody that like all week is like, oh, I'm going to be a special operator. I'm going to be in charge of dropping bombs. Oh, really? You don't even know how to wear that outfit correctly. Like you don't know how to wear your clothes. So can we find a middle ground here? What are some good trends?
Good trends, attitude. A lot of students who come through with good attitude, positive attitude. So attitude for sure. Students who are free thinkers or critical thinkers, being able to think outside the box.
Perfect. Hey, students, I hope you're hearing this.
To be able
Chris,
to kind of decipher a process or a problem,
that line.
and then maybe find a few solutions to execute or to solve it.
Okay, if just barely, maybe a little bit extra.
What else? For
that's all you need. Listen, Uncle Aaron. I can't call myself.
Driving motivation is big, so ensuring that they want to be there and they're performing and giving effort as they go the day to day.
Yeah. It is.
And then another big one,
Air Force
in my
Special
opinion, would be
stepdad. You may not like me, but you will respect.
Just lost my train of thought.
Mark that one down, Peaches. That was a rat bite. Yeah.
Basically, the thirst for knowledge, being hungry for information, being open to new information, being able to take it in and want to go seek it out. That's another big one. Students who are there to learn.
If it's just barely
they want to learn the job and learn as much as they can while they're in this course, and hopefully carry that attribute or that quality as they move forward. Because when students graduate here, we're never done learning, and so there's way more information to learn, way more knowledge that they can attain when they get to the operational units. And we only have 16 weeks here at Phase 1, so we can't teach them everything, but we can hopefully create a good foundation for these individuals to hopefully take that on forward and be successful.
No,
that's the
awesome.
Hair game on point, though. You seen a lot of good hair out there?
Yeah, some good haircuts. Some students who like to skirt the line of regs, but
perfect. Hey, students, I hope you're hearing this, and Chris, I hope you don't. I hope this doesn't ruin our friendship. Students, keep pushing that line. If it's just barely in regs, it's in regs, okay? If it's just barely, maybe a little bit extra pomade, that's all you need. Listen, Uncle Aaron, I can't call myself Uncle Aaron because there's already an Uncle BK. How about this? How about Stepdad Aaron says, hey, because you never like your stepdad. Yeah. It is. I'm the Air Force Special Warfare stepdad. You may not like me, but you will respect. Mark that one down, Peaches. That was a rat bite.
I also won't do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead. And
go ahead and timestamp that one. Don't worry, everybody's gonna find it and send it to me anyway. So sorry for the derail, but yeah, if it's just barely in regs, students, it's in regs.
Chris,
last question before we wrap this up. What advice for all those that are listening? What advice would you give them? Whether it's education, training, attitude, which you said is been good, or whether recovery, just maybe your top one or two pieces of advice that you would give to the folks that would be coming in wanting to be a TACP.
So top two things of advice for those coming through. I probably hit on that already, but I would say the biggest one is attitude for sure. Attitude, I can't put something that enough. It's hard to train attitude. The individual themselves develops that and carries that with them. They can maybe develop and fine tune and tweak it as they progress on. But if the student doesn't want to be there, we can only do so much to help them along the way. We can only give so much additional instruction, only so much guidance. But if the individual doesn't want to take that guidance in, that additional instruction, and they think they know everything themselves, sorry, then we can only do so much for you, and then we can find a different career field, or you can try to get to this course by yourself, but you may not be successful going through. So definitely attitude for sure. I would say the next one is just being a team player, being a teammate. Within this course, they are evaluated and graded individually at times, but many times they're graded as a team. And so understanding being a good team player, ensuring that they can delegate tasks, know that the NCOs and officers can't do everything for them. And hopefully we instilled in the officer and NCOs that, hey, you can't do everything yourselves either. So being able to disseminate information, delegate tasks, allows the team to hopefully function a lot smoother and better going through. There'll be times in the course where we let the students plan a mission, and all of a sudden we take someone out of the equation, throw someone else in there, and hopefully their team caught them up to speed, or they understand what they're doing
of all
to execute. So making sure everyone's involved in the processes that they conduct here is super important. And so make sure everyone has a contribution to the mission or to the task at hand. Just don't leave everyone out.
Thanks for coming on. I got to jump, but I really appreciate you coming on. Anytime you want to come on and talk about stuff,
teams that work together, communicate together, are very, very successful.
That's what we would call a trend for advice, because not everybody, but a lot of people say, even though it's not the exact same thing, it's it all ties into each other. Be trainable, have a good attitude, be a good teammate, and I know it's difficult to define. Hey, what's a good teammate? Because there's so many different aspects of it. But if you have to question it, is this what's good for the team? Maybe it's not. Or if you get that selfish feeling, hey, everybody else is working and I'm kind of doing my own thing, worrying about my own stuff, maybe you're in the wrong. But anyway, great chatting with you, Chris. FTU Phase 1 sounds like it's off to a great start. I know it's been around for a while now, but it was really educational for me, and I'm sure some folks out there will enjoy it. So appreciate everybody joining, and watch, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave us a review, because tell us how great or poorly we're doing, and or how bad Aaron's hair looks, and then we'll go from there. All right, everybody. I'm not even going to give you a chance to respond. Later, everybody.